This is Compound Insights, a podcast by CFA Society New York. I'm your host, Rob Rowan. Today we're discussing a skill that is important to many CFA Society New York members, how to communicate like a leader. Our guest today is Judith Humphrey. She is an author and the founder of the Humphrey Group, a communications firm. Her 3 books, Impromptu, Taking the Stage, and Speaking as a Leader, show how to inspire and influence, formally and informally and off the cuff. You may have seen her regular column in Fast Company. Judith, thank you for being here. I often like to start these with a little clarification so that everyone is on the same page. What is the difference, in your mind, between a leader and a manager?
There's a huge difference. And it's interesting because we often don't make that distinction when we think of titles. When we think of somebody has a managerial title or an executive title. But a leader can be a leader at any level with any title. And a leader is someone who inspires. A manager is someone who informs. And by that I mean that a leader is geared to moving people to believe in a vision, believe in their role, believe that they have a part of a team that's important, and believe that they can accomplish. So leaders create believers. Managers inform. They tell people what their job is, how to do it, when to do it, who to do it with. And so they give instructions. But how much more powerful is leadership than management? And a manager can have the title of manager, but be a leader by creating believers.
I see. That is fascinating. One of the other things that I found quite interesting is that you have applied the concept of emotional intelligence to a company. Can you explain your view on that a bit, please?
Yeah, and I guess you were reading my Fast Company article.
I was, yeah.
Do you work for an emotionally intelligent company? And that's really a question that everyone should ask. And we don't normally think of emotional intelligence in terms of companies, but we think of it in terms of individuals. Does an individual have emotional intelligence? Well, if the leadership team has emotional intelligence, chances are the company will too. But if you want to know whether your company has emotional intelligence, you can ask 3 questions. If your company were a person, would you want to be a friend of that company or that person? How many employees can say yes? Or secondly, does your company view you as you view yourself, or as you want to be viewed? And the answer has to be yes if that's an emotionally intelligent company. Or third, does your company help you become your best self? And again, you have to say yes if your company is emotionally intelligent. Now, if you say no to those questions, then are you working for the right company? You want an emotionally intelligent boss who cares about you, who empathizes, who respects you, who connects with you. You want those same qualities in a company. And I think the fact that so many people are on the lookout for new jobs and new companies means that companies aren't doing their part to be emotionally intelligent.
Mm-hmm. Do you, I don't know if you have any experience with this, but do you see that most people are aware or have really verbalized or written down what their best self means?
I think people are striving for that more than ever. I mean, if I read a lot of articles coming out of Fast Company, I read a lot of them, and I read a lot of the research about millennials, Gen X, Gen Z, and it seems to me that the language that people use today, young people especially use today, is the language of aspiration. They want to be their best self. I think millennials are known for wanting to achieve their best self, wanting to achieve their highest goals. This is something that wasn't so true of my generation. We were happy to have a job, but today they're really, I think people are looking for those aspirational goals. They're looking for awesomeness. They're looking to be their best self, and certainly Instagram moves them in that direction by creating an image of them every day they post or tell their story. So, yeah, I think people are striving to be their best self.
Okay. So maybe this is a good time to dig into what a leader's presence is. Could you unpack what you think that means? I know you mentioned some things before about somebody connects with you, et cetera, but what is a leader's presence?
Well, let's say you're talking with somebody and that person is a leader. That leader is going to project certain qualities physically. When we think of presence, we think of being fully present to others. And that means that they're not looking around, looking at their watch, looking at their phone. They're not distracted, but they're actually focused on you, their audience. It could be an audience of one or a group, but they're there for you. And how do they show that? Well, they show it by not being distracted. They show it by being very focused. It's very difficult to focus these days, but a leader focuses on the people he or she is talking to, or the person he or she is talking to. And you do that physically and mentally. Mentally by not, running another script in your mind when you're talking to somebody. But physically, you have presence by looking people in the eye, not looking away, by using strong eye contact, by having a warm and caring a facial expression, so you can tell whether somebody's really connected to you by looking at their face, their eye contact, their face. They may smile, they may laugh, they respond to you. Also, their posture. A leader's posture is tall, whether he or she is sitting or standing. A leader stands tall, has stature. We think of stature as height, but it's also a way of standing and sitting tall. A leader is open, and that means the leader's arms are open. Open gestures, not crossed, not folded. We see people standing with their arms crossed. They're not expressing leadership because they're not expressing openness. So those are some of the qualities that define presence, a leader's presence. And there's an energy. Finally, there's an energy that comes from a leader. I call it charisma. And there's an article I wrote in Fast Company on charisma. And it really comes down to being energized so that the person you're talking to really feels that energy and becomes part of it and feels that you're really exciting and engaged and really inspiring. So those are all the qualities of a leadership presence, and they're really important. I find that, people, you can just look at somebody talking for 5 seconds and you can tell whether they have leadership in them.
Yeah, I think that's just one thing I'd like to inflate in there that I've seen around is eye contact has, during my lifetime, definitely waned due to the distraction of screens. And there is also a certain amount of research that backs that up. I did read some research a few months ago that showed that in 1974, the average attention span was some 11 seconds, and that had shrunk by till 2018 to 7. And,
yes, about the length of time, the attention span of a goldfish, apparently.
Right. So in many ways, this is, focus is the new IQ, right? Because we have access to information all over the place. It's the focus that counts.
Well, exactly. And in your profession, the CFA profession, there's tons of information, tons of knowledge. I mean, your association members are highly educated. And I've worked with some of them and coached some of them, and they have so much knowledge, but they have to really move away from just delivering knowledge, and they have to really think about their audience, think about whether their audience hears them, believes them, and wants to follow them. For example, I coached a group of CFA members in Toronto, and they were preparing for a contest and where they had to pitch ideas. And I found that they had so much knowledge, but it was delivered too fast.
Right.
So people in the audience couldn't absorb it. And so more pausing is important for leadership presence.
Right. That sounds like the research challenge. Does that ring a bell?
It was.
Yeah.
Yes, I worked with 2 teams.
Yeah.
They were great, so smart.
Oh, they're incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, and they had their main message, which was important. It's always important to get beyond information and really have a message. But the speed with which they delivered their messages meant that nobody could really care about it.
Right.
So I told them to pause before speaking, pause between their statements, give the audience a chance to absorb.
This is interesting because there's another trend that I observed in one of your books. There's been this global trend towards open plan offices, which makes off-the-cuff communication more important. And
Absolutely.
I was interested to read in what you wrote in your book Impromptu about quickly scripting yourself, and wondered if that trend has made that more valuable. So could you tell us sort of how one starts to quickly script yourself?
There's a template in that book, Impromptu, that really governs an effective impromptu comment or conversation. And you start with something warm. In other words, instead of starting with just content, start with something interpersonal, something that connects you with the other person. So let's say you just come out of a meeting and one of your team members walks by. Instead of ignoring that person, just say, "Hey, that was a great comment you made in the meeting." That would be what we call a grabber, the starting point of any impromptu conversation. Just a one-liner. And then you get to the point. The message comes next. And you might, this manager or boss might say, I think that has great potential. That idea of bringing that project into our domain has great potential. Or he might say, I think we should go after that client. Or you make a very good point about the next step in this project. So that's a message, one sentence message. And then the boss would maybe give 2 or 3 reasons why he believes the message is so. So you want a body, you want proof points, even in an impromptu conversation. So he might say to the employee, "Here's why I believe in this idea. Point 1, point 2, point 3." And then close. The close is really important. The close of any impromptu conversation is what we call a call to action. So where do you want to take this? Every conversation should move the discussion forward in some way. So the person you're talking to needs some kind of call to action. So the boss might say, "Let's get together and explore how we can make this happen." That's a call to action. So really, if you think of an impromptu conversation, as I describe it in my book, Impromptu, it consists of a number of components: the grabber, the message, a few proof points, and the call to action. Now, any conversation, even a 30-second conversation, is going to be better by using this technique. And I'm glad you asked about impromptu conversations, because it's very easy to really hit and miss with them. Some are great. Some elevator conversations may be great. "Hi, I loved your speech. Here's what I loved about it, blah, blah, blah. Could you send me a copy?" That would be a short impromptu conversation using the template. But sometimes we get in the elevator, or we are running down the hallway, and we don't know what to say. We might blather something like, "Oh, how's it going?" And that's a dumb conversation. That goes nowhere. It doesn't build a relationship. Right.
Right. So I wonder if the last part of that, the connecting that to something I believe in, is that, can you do without that? Because this sounds like an awful large list of things to do very quickly.
It does.
Is it practice?
That's why you have to read the whole book.
A lot, or? Right. Okay.
But it's actually very easy once you master this. And when I spoke to the CFA team in Toronto, they said this was the most valuable thing that they got out of the 1 hour presentation. This template. But it does sound initially like a big order. So what were you going to say about, can we simplify it?
No, I was the thing. I think it is worthwhile reading this book. I think that there are a lot of these types of things that are really addressable through practice. Mm-hmm. It's a way of thinking, and that I think can change. So I would advise everyone to check it out. Let's do a scenario. You tell me the scenario, and I'll tell you how to do it. Okay, so let's say I had a meeting which we have a lot around here, on programming, on what we're doing with our upcoming events, and sort of some of it's logistical, some of it's directional, some of it's content. And we broke from that meeting an hour ago, and someone who was in there walks by, who I genuinely had my eyes open to something they said, something I didn't think about before or know before. Let's say it's something about the way that we set the room up and its impact on people's adoption of new ideas in terms of where the chairs are. Mm-hmm. And this person walks by my desk, and I say, thanks for sharing that in the meeting. You obviously have a lot of experience in this. I hadn't thought about it at all. Mm-hmm. I think that's important because one of our overall goals here is education, and depth of education is hard to get, hard to measure. Mm-hmm. I also think it's important for us to think about things like that, because we tend to focus solely on whether the speaker was any good. Mm-hmm. And we miss some of those sidebar things, and I think those sidebar things are important. So that's where I got to. No, I think that's very good. I think what you just said was very good. I would say separate the items. So start with the grabber. So you say, thanks so much. So this person walks by your desk, and you say, thanks so much for speaking up in the meeting today. That would be your grabber. Okay. Your message is, you made a really good point about our need to think about the seating in the room in our programming meetings. We need to think about it and then you had several reasons, because we usually just think about the quality of the speaker. Mm-hmm. But thinking about how people are seated is really looking at the dynamic and whether people are properly positioned to speak up, encouraged to speak up. So I'd like to, now we're getting to the call to action, I'd like to sit down with you and explore some guidelines we might put together for seating arrangements and what they would actually create for us in terms of more input, more conversation, better conversation. Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. I hope that's that's something I guess that's that last part I didn't quite catch, but that is really helpful. I will think about that and maybe try it after my 11 o'clock meeting today. That's great. And did you see how I kind of separated each item? So the grabber, and then pause, then the message. That's an idea we should really consider. Would be the message. Yeah, I definitely will. I think it's easy when you're thinking about these things to sort of get them out in lockstep order, because I just thought of these things. It isn't this great. Absolutely. I can send you that pesky ego. No, but you're just starting to use the template.
And it takes time. I mean, I've been using it, believe it or not, I've been using it my entire career because I started out teaching at the university here in Toronto, and I taught students how to write, and they had to have an opening, and they had to have a thesis, and they had to prove their thesis. And so then I went into speech writing, and when I was writing speeches for executives, because many more speeches were given then than today, I used the same template and added the call to action at the end. And then presentations, the same thing. And then more and more impromptu speaking is happening today, as you said. So I designed a template, a shorter version of the template for the impromptu remarks. And so it really, really works well, but you have to practice, and you've done a great job with your first cut at it. Very good.
Thank you. Well, that does actually make me think about something else because of your substantial experience. And you mentioned earlier that no one's really speaking like that anymore. I wonder how the concept of leadership has changed during your career.
It's changed for the better in many ways. And I would say that the basic difference is that when I was back in my early stage in my career writing speeches for CEOs, these CEOs were preaching. They were preaching from the pulpit, from the podium, and they didn't make themselves available to employees at all levels. They didn't really care that much about communicating with people at all levels. And they saw themselves as really the focal point of the organization. And today, that's changed. Leaders today can be at any level. And executives understand, smart executives and emotionally intelligent executives understand that they aren't the only leaders in the organization. And they also understand that they have to communicate to everyone in the organization. The organizations have become flat. They're no longer the powerful ones, but everyone has power and can have power. And so the leaders of today make themselves available to the entire organization. They have more interactive situations, more impromptu conversations, either in the hallway or in actual staged events. They'll be speaking impromptu. So many leaders today don't work from scripts. Elon Musk, for example, said he has a speechwriter, but he doesn't use his speechwriter to create his own speeches. He says he creates his own words, and he does it brilliantly. So I think the leaders today are open, they're accessible, they're authentic, they talk about their vulnerabilities, they're real. The good leaders are real and caring and empathetic, and it's so much better than the previous definition of what a leader should be.
That is fascinating. Perhaps we should leave it there and encourage everyone to dig into your books, and particularly Impromptu, which is where the exercise we just did.
Thank you so much, Rob. It's been an amazing conversation. I could go on for hours with you.
It was fun.
It's fun.
And thank you all for listening in to Compound Insights by CFA Society New York. You can find other episodes on the podcast app of your choice and our website, cfany.org. Our next episode will cover the issues around the developed world's recent monetary and fiscal policy movements. I hope you'll listen in.